Concerned about something that Donald Trump said in a phone call with a foreign leader, that they filed this whistleblower complaint knowing that they were putting their career at risk and believing that it would be transmitted to Congress.
Adam Schiff is now at the microphone. Let's hear what he has to say.
Intelligence community, and I wanted to make some preliminary comments. First of all, I want to thank the whistleblower for coming forward, for having the courage to follow the procedures as they're written in law, to make a lawful disclosure to the Congress and to the Inspector General of conduct that was gravely concerning to the whistleblower. Under the law, when a whistleblower does that, the Inspector General has 2 weeks to investigate that complaint, to determine if it's urgent and credible, and to forward that complaint to the Director of National Intelligence. The Inspector General made exactly those determinations, found that this was within the jurisdiction of the Director of National Intelligence, that it was an urgent matter, and it met the statutory requirements that it dealt with a serious or flagrant abuse, violation of law, or other misconduct or misuse of resources. What then is supposed to happen is the Director of National Intelligence has 7 days to review the complaint, and then they shall provide it to the Congress. And they shall instruct, through the Inspector General, the whistleblower, how the whistleblower can come directly to Congress. In the absence of that whistleblower law, there is no lawful mechanism for an intelligence community employee or detailee or contractor to raise a complaint about serious misconduct. The whole point of the whistleblower statute is not only to encourage those to report problems, abuses, violations of laws, but also to have a legal mechanism to do so and not to disclose classified information because there's no other remedy. That whole purpose is being frustrated here because the Director of National Intelligence has made the unprecedented decision not to share the complaint with Congress. We were informed of this fact after the 7-day period in which the Director has to review it and submit it to Congress had expired. No complaint was provided, and the Inspector General felt it necessary to inform the Congress that that complaint was being withheld. In the absence of the actions, and I want to thank the Inspector General, in the absence of his actions and coming to our committee, we might not have even known there was a whistleblower complaint alleging an urgent concern. We will be releasing the Inspector General's letters, but I want to read one sentence from them. Mr. Atkinson wrote, "I set forth the reasons for my concluding that the subject matter involved in the complainant's disclosure not only falls within the DNI's jurisdiction, but relates to one of the most significant and important of the DNI's responsibilities to the American people." This is what's being withheld from Congress right now. We do know that the Department of Justice has been involved in the decision to withhold that information from Congress. We do not know, because we cannot get an answer to the question about whether the White House is also involved in preventing this information from coming to Congress. We do not have the complaint. We do not know whether the press reports are accurate or inaccurate about the contents of that complaint. But what I do know is this: if in a matter within the jurisdiction of the Director of National Intelligence, you have an employee of that community or a contractor or detailee who follows the law and makes a complaint, and it is possible for the subject of that complaint to essentially quash the complaint or keep it from Congress, then this system is badly broken. Now, I don't think this is a problem of the law. I think the law is written very clearly. I think the law is just fine. The problem lies elsewhere. And we're determined to do everything we can to determine what this urgent concern is, to make sure that the national security is protected, and to make sure that this whistleblower is protected. Because the impact of this opinion, which the Department of Justice has been unwilling to share with us, the impact of this opinion is that if the Department of Justice decides that an employee of the intelligence community who comes forward, follows the law, follows the process, is nonetheless outside the process, they're not protected. Which not only means that this whistleblower is not protected, it means no whistleblower is protected. That is the danger of the DOJ's misinterpretation of the law. So that is where we are right now. Next week, we will have an open hearing with the Director of National Intelligence where he can explain to the country why he believes this urgent concern should not be shared with the Congress. But that's where we are, and I'd be happy to respond to a few questions.
Do you believe that the White House or the President himself are pressuring the acting Director of National Intelligence not to hand this information over to you?
All I do know is this. I don't know whether the White House is directly involved because we can't get an answer to that question, but we do know that they are making some claim that a privilege may apply. Well, that narrows the category who may be intervening here. We also know that there are other institutions involved that are preventing us from getting the complaint. And whether this is pressure brought by the White House, whether this is the Director of National Intelligence feeling that he is straitjacketed by this opinion of the Department of Justice, whether the Department of Justice is coordinating its activities with either the White House or the subject of the complaint, we don't know. But given the Inspector General said this is urgent, it can't wait, which is a profound concern that we have over what we have seen over the last year, which is a concerted strategy to run out the clock on any information getting to Congress. Here, where it's urgent, that is simply not an option.
Mr. Chairman, why were you not able to get an answer today about whether or not the White House intervened, and why were you not able to get an answer about the substance of the complaint?
Well, there is no privilege that covers whether the White House is involved in trying to stifle a whistleblower complaint. And I should say that even if you could make a colorable claim of privilege over the subject matter of the complaint, given that it involves something that the IG has already found to be serious and credible and evidence of wrongdoing of one kind or another, there is no privilege that covers that. There is no privilege to conceal that. There is no privilege to be corrupt. And so that needs to be provided to Congress. We can't get an answer because the Department of Justice and the Director of National Intelligence will not authorize the IG to tell us. And the Inspector General is doing his very best to be very careful that he follow the law. And in some respects, the Inspector General is in the same position of the whistleblower, which is if the Inspector General steps 1 foot outside of what he's authorized to do, then he is not protected. And so this shows how someone is trying to manipulate the system to keep information about an urgent matter from the Congress.
What is your recourse?
In one of your letters, you stated who your suspicions involved. Who do you think that this allegation of this complaint involves?
Well, we know a few things. We know that this is a matter, as I just read the language of the Inspector General. The Inspector General is a nonpartisan, neutral official here. And we have no reason to question his judgment. His judgment is, this is not only within the DNI's jurisdiction, this is squarely within what the American people expect of a Director of National Intelligence. So who is in a position to countermand that? Who is in a position to influence an acting Director of National Intelligence who has not been on the job very long to do something completely unprecedented, which is to go outside of his own agency and seek an opinion about whether he has to provide this to Congress? There are a limited number of options that also implicate privilege. And so the shorter answer is we don't know, but there's certainly a lot of indications it is someone at a higher pay grade than the Director of National Intelligence.
But in your letter, you said that you suspected this was to protect the President of the United States. Do you stand by the statement?
I believe that there is an effort to prevent this information getting to Congress. And if the assertion is accurate that the Department of Justice has made and the DNI has affirmed that this involves a potentially privileged communication, then at one level or another, it likely involves either the president or people around him.
Mr.
Last
Chairman,
question.
Mr. Chairman, you've already subpoenaed this complaint, and you just laid out all of the blocking activity that's happening being able to get the complaint. What are your options at this point, legally to obtain it? What's your recourse?
Well, we will hear more, we will learn more next Thursday when the Director of National Intelligence testifies. And we are exploring with the House General Counsel what our options are. I would imagine if it comes down that we have to go to court to get this, that we will have a very good case to seek a temporary restraining order or a mandamus or some urgent form of relief because the Inspector General has said this cannot wait. So this is not a situation where we can afford to go through weeks or months of litigation in this court or that court. There's an urgency here that I think the courts will recognize. I hope that's not necessary. And I hope that the Director of National Intelligence will reconsider, because it's my understanding that by law, he can provide this to us, and indeed by law, he's required to provide this to us. But we will look at whatever remedies we have, including when the Director of National Intelligence comes to the Congress for authorization to reprogram funds for one purpose or another. We will look to whether he is abiding by the law in making a decision about those requests. So we will use whatever leverage we can, but at the end of the day, we are determined to validate the whistleblower process to make sure that people can expose wrongdoing. And because what's at stake here goes well beyond this complaint and this president to whether any oversight is possible, any whistleblower is protected, and we're determined to validate that authority of the Congress. Thank you.
Well, I want to bring Josh in first. Josh, what did you hear there? Because for me, a regular civilian, I didn't learn much of anything.
No, it sounds like that there's a bit of stonewalling going on, and there are some key issues here at play. The first,
I want to weigh in on this real quick because of the significance of what went on in my life. Whenever I went out to Mount Carmel down in the Waco, Texas area and investigated thoroughly towards what went on and even had interviews with various people that was involved in the 51-day standoff, I had no idea that I was dabbling off into an out-and-out cover-up, a conspiracy. And it wasn't until later, until I put all the dots together, including the dots that happened to me out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, of realizing that yes, this was in fact a major cover-up that the general public should have been aware of. And I have watched various interviews from various investigators, either investigators down in the Waco, Mount Carmel area, as well as investigators towards the Oklahoma bombing. And I have recognized that their conclusion was the same as mine. That lots of evidence did not get formally or informally presented to the general public, towards the general public making their own decisions towards what exactly happened in both incidences, putting both incidences together. And I realize this is in the past. Don't get me wrong, I'm not naive or conceited in the form of knowing that this was in the past. But the fact of the matter is, this has literally almost destroyed my life. And it began with a bunch of people up here in Weakley County, for some strange reason, took it upon to themselves that they was going to initiate the first blows in my life, going all the way back into 2005. It was in 2005 whenever they initiated this type of attack upon to my character pertaining to not only the Martin PD but the Weakley County authorities that continue to escalate. And as these occurrences kept escalating into my life, various people kept questioning my motives. Well, why is he over here? Why is he up here in the land between the lakes area? How come he's down here into the Atlanta basin? How come he's over here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma? Why did he go out to Mount Carmel, to Waco, Texas, knocking on various people's doors within a 5-mile radius, getting their testimonies towards how they felt about the situation? I'm going to tell you why. It's simply because I knew that there was a cover-up. A cover-up that didn't just begin in 1993 or 1995 pertaining to both incidences, including Ruby Ridge. But I knew that there was a government cover-up that started in 1988 after 9 tapes submerged to the White House. I knew that this government made a faulty, bad decision in speaking out of one side of their mouth. Once more, white man speaketh with forked tongue, pertaining to peace, peace. But yet now we've spent over $7 trillion. God only knows that the eyes, the arms, the legs, the hands, the emotions. God only knows that the deaths that has occurred because of the bad decision that was made during the Reagan and the Bush's administration. I knew that things was out of focus, things was out of balance. And of course, after I went back down into St. Augustine, working for Wilson Chevrolet Garage there in St. Augustine in 2006, leading up into 2007, that's whenever I took it upon to myself towards purchasing another sword there on St. John Street, there in St. Augustine, Florida, and pursued to attempt for God the Father to anoint the sword symbolizing peace on earth, so that we would see these injustices turned around, of knowing what actually has occurred for the past 30, well, at the time it was basically about 25 years or 20 something years. Now it's been 30 years that has passed. But I knew the truth of the matter, that things was not being properly handled in the White House. Now, regarding what you just got through listening to pertaining to this interview with the subject matter pertaining to this sensitive information that has now come forth pertaining to a whistleblower, if they treat this man like they treated me, his whole life will be in ruin. His family's life will be in ruin. Everything that the man does or touches or bees around from this moment on will be at ruin, simply because he was trying to do the patriotic thing in his duties that he felt obligated to. If they treat him like they treated me. Hopefully they won't. And hopefully we will generate a good standard of law in these regards towards understanding that certain things are appropriate to be said to certain combatic communist controlled country, and certain things are not appropriate to say to certain combative entities in other communist countries. Now, in some people's minds and in some people's eyes, they're going to say, there he goes again. There he goes again. He's meddling. He's meddling. No, I'm not meddling. I'm trying to get to the bottom of what the hell happened that has caused America to spend over $6 or $7 trillion in the Middle East. And to this day, the Middle East is still as unsafe and as unstable as what it's ever been. How come we have spent this much time and this much money in trying to solve a problem that should have been solved a long time ago if it was handled properly? How come today we are still, the American people have still not got a reasonable answer from this government towards getting the better bang for the buck? I do believe that the American people deserve to know what went on and how it went on and what should have happened and what didn't happen to get to the bottom of the truth, especially whenever you're talking about the conspiracy on the same level of King Herod ordering for every male child to be beheaded, that they estimate over 5,000 sacrificed during the time of Jesus' arrival. How come the same type of conspiracy happened in a godly controlled country here in America on the same type of level, in the same type of atmosphere, in the same type of motive towards going to stop biblical Bible prophecy from happening, from occurring? Once more, I did not select or choose this assignment. Rather than this assignment has chosen me. But I have been victimized. My family has been victimized. My life has been victimized to the point that I had to submerge underground towards an early retirement because I knew the chatter. I knew the malicious gossip. I knew the lies and the innuendos that was out there was basically going to tear my very civil duties and my very civil life and my Christian life apart. And of course, since then, I have come back to Weakley County and I have seen how that the court system wanted to validate their approach in trying to defend the things that was occurring out here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, or the things that was occurring at 430 Beach Grove Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. We see now how that the authorities, the judge, the DA, the prosecuting attorney, Tommy Thomas, and other various law enforcement agencies in this area, we see how unfairly and unjust and how biased that they truly was. So I pray to God that whoever that this is that distributed this type of information to Congress pertaining to them being a whistleblower on the same pace, on the same political stance, on the same patriotic duty performances, I pray to God that his life and his family's life will not be torn apart and destroyed, similar towards how that the founder of the Windmill Ministries was torn apart, simply for trying to do a good deed, simply trying to do that in which what he or she felt like that they needed to do, similar towards us paying very close attention to what was going on across the road here pertaining to the children that was being exposed to irregularities and to type of abuseness that David and I discussed again and again and again. These children should not have to be putting up with this type of crazy insanity stuff that was going on that they was having to be exposed to. And because we tried to be the good Samaritan towards our civil duties, towards doing the right thing, once more they flipped it and turned it around, and then all of a sudden captured me in a vulnerable position right after my brother had died and my unit out here had not been fully constructed, so I could not use the unit for a down payment pertaining to them putting me on some sort of, I don't forgot the name of it now, whenever they put you on a bond. I couldn't use the property as a bond, so I was stuck in between a hard place and a rock. In the meantime, grieving and sobbing over the death of my brother, and grieving and sobbing how that I seen how that they was continually taking advantage of us out here, to the point that they was basically trying to finish me off, finish the founder of the Windmill Ministries off. And now it has reached the point that they have basically cut their own noses off to despite their faces, and to get somebody like Tommy Moore or Tommy Thomas or the prosecuting attorneys or the judicial system in this county to reverse their actions is going to take a damn act of Congress to do so, knowing that they're guilty. And they're still sniggering and laughing over what that they feel like that they have overcome. But yet no, our weather goes through extreme changes, knowing that they have attacked a ministry going all the way back into 1989, whenever Madison County and the Secret Service of the United States of America decided to attack a ministry that they never should have attacked, towards confiscating the first sword symbolizing peace on earth. I have said it before and I say it again. These people don't want peace. They like chaos. They like rapes and murders. They like their children being abused and taken advantage of, and the drug culture and all the divorces and all the problems that the American people has had to go through just within the past 25 or 30 years. There are certain people in this area and throughout the state of Tennessee and throughout this country that want chaos. They want it to be chaotic. They are looking forward to the devil's rule and reign, in which he's almost fully accomplished that if you really get to looking at all the harm and hurt, all the danger, all the molestations, all the drug inducement. He's almost accomplished in destroying the very fundamentalist of the American way of life. I know whenever it comes to my constitution, my personal constitution towards me being the founder of the Windmill Ministries, my constitution got blowed out of the door as far as I'm concerned, going all the way back to 1989. In addition to all the other occurrences that took place, either with Secret Service or with the state of Kentucky, or with locals pertaining to land between the lakes, or the state of Tennessee that wound up banning me from all federal and state facilities simply because I was out west doing some work, some investigating work towards finding out the truth pertaining to the noble lie, or it was the Oklahoma authorities. I have been sabotaged in the degree that various people wanted me, listen to me, wanted me to fail. Which takes us right back to King Herod. King Herod did not want Jesus Christ to succeed. And if King Herod didn't want Jesus Christ to succeed, don't you think that other assessors and other people that surrounded King Herod and had the same type of ideology as King Herod felt the same way about Jesus? That's the reason why they had to hide Jesus. That's the reason why they had to take Jesus away from his birthplace, way over into a faraway country to raise him up as a young man. He had to be disguised. And that's the reason why that he didn't begin his ministry until the age of 30. That's whenever he stepped out into the eyes of the general public, was because he had to work in secrecy. If not, they was going to kill him. He never would have been able to have fulfilled the last 3.5 years, much less the first 30 years, if he'd have been out in the open. And there was still many, many demons that knew exactly where Jesus was and what Jesus was doing. And I can correspond with that whenever the whenever Jesus walked up to the man that was possessed, and the man that was possessed said, "We know who thou art. Thou art the Holy One. Hast thou come to destroy us before our time?" That was the demonic supernatural speaking through that individual. And they begged for mercy, and rather than Jesus destroy the demons that was in that particular person, because there was many. The Bible said that there was a legion, which means many. He cast the demons off into the swine, and the swine run off the cliff and killed themselves. Now, where the demons went, I guarantee you the demons didn't die. The demons did not die that got thrown off into that group of pigs, that swine. They developed new residencies in other people. The demonic world is still alive as well today as what it was whenever the first initial blow took place in the heavenly kingdom, whenever Lucifer and a third of the angels challenged the kingdom of God. They're still alive, they're still well, they're still on this planet, they're still working, they're still developing, they're still growing, they're still working through various people and various situations. And if you don't believe that, you're very, very naive, or you're just blinder than a bat. Let's listen to the rest of this, and then we got to cut this off, because this has been very, very crucial pertaining to our democracy, once more pertaining to the checks and balances. We are not under some sort of a communist ruled country to the point that we only have one dictator that tells us what the rules and regulations are going to be. That's what separates America from all these other communist controlled countries and nations. Please listen.
Which being the idea of this whistleblower who followed the proper procedures to come forward with some type of allegation. We don't know exactly what that is, but to go through the processes to bring that to the attention of the people in power that need to know that information. Now, if the White House tries to obstruct that, my fear is that that's now sending a message to potential whistleblowers across the intelligence community. And one thing that was interesting, my CNN colleague Manu Raju there asked a question about privilege. Well, what is the privilege that the White House is trying to assert here? We need more information on that, because if they're simply just trying to protect the conversations of the president, that has to be squared with this potential threat that at least the Inspector General says is a key issue. And then the second thing here is, this is a pattern that we've seen. Our colleagues at CNN, the NBC News team, have long chronicled the clashes between the White House and the intelligence community since the White House, the president came into power. First, it was the president saying, well, there's this deep state that's out there to get me, and really railing on them. Here, this is the opposite of that. This is someone who's not coming out to leak information. It's someone who is concerned about an allegation and wants to provide that to the people that need to know it, but it appears as though that person is being obstructed.
Let me play devil's advocate for a moment, though. Not all whistleblower claims rise to the level that they should become known by the public. There are many instances, at least, and I'm not speaking about government, because that's where I want you to help me, in corporate America, where someone might make a claim, the authorities above might review it and say, okay, great, we're going to take it. This doesn't need to take it to the next level, because we don't actually know what the claim is.
That's a great point. But what I would say is, having served in the intelligence community inside the FBI, every single year I had to sign a certification form saying that if I witnessed any intelligence abuse, it wasn't just an option to report it, it was mandatory. And so since the intelligence abuses of the 1970s, where the government engaged in gross violation of civil liberty violations, we've now gotten to the culture where if someone inside the intelligence community, if they think that there's something wrong, their job is to report it. It doesn't, it's going to be determined later on the degree to which that might have been illegal, but this chills whistleblowing if we say at the outset that this isn't important enough to get to the Congress, the elected people, the elected representatives of the American people.
Exactly. I have another logistics question. Tell me what it's like. So the president is on the phone, and now there's a whistleblower. Who gets to listen to these calls? Like, set the stage for me. Is someone standing in the room where the president is? Are they listening in? Are they seeing transcripts? How does it work? Because by the president's tweet, he's like, please, of course I know people are listening. Why would I say something? Well, You might forget that if you're actually leaning back on a phone call by yourself without anyone standing near you. Like, we often forget we have a hot mic.
Right, no, exactly. With the President of the United States, there are processes in place where calls are patched through. The President doesn't pick up the phone and start dialing. There are people that will listen in for purpose of memorializing what that conversation was.
But are people necessarily sitting in the room with him?
They could be. That's up to the President if he has advisors, around him. But you would have the White House Communications Office, for example, in the Situation Room, which would be patching in, calls from foreign leaders. And so there are others there. But the one fascinating thing about the President's defense of this, which you just read his tweet earlier, he's saying, do you think I'm really dumb enough to say something inappropriate while all these other people are listening in? The counter to that is, if it's so innocent, why is the White House, or at least the executive branch, trying to obstruct that from getting to Congress? If there's no there, release the information, help protect the whistleblower process.
Exactly. If you hadn't got nothing to hide, why are you hiding it?
Fair point. Abby, Adam Schiff didn't say, or said they don't specifically know if the White House was directly involved, but the White House is making a claim that privilege may apply. So what does that tell us? Or what does it tell you?
Well, the lack of knowledge in the Intelligence Committee just shows me how much of a struggle this is between the two branches of the federal government. And what we see happening here is a Congress that is not getting access to information. The public doesn't always get to know everything that happens, like you mentioned before. But the House Intelligence Committee, the people who are appointed to that committee are supposed to be very serious members of Congress who are supposed to be able to handle this kind of information. And that they're not being able to get information of an ongoing national security issue is a serious allegation that Chairman Schiff is making. And I think a lot of pressure is on him on how the next hearing next week, the open one, is going to be conducted.
Ken Delaney, and what stuck out to you from what Adam Schiff said?
Well, there is another side of the argument. I've seen the letters that the DNI's general counsel has sent to Schiff, and what they're arguing is that this conduct and the person who's the subject of the complaint, they don't name him, but we know it's Donald Trump, does not fall under the Intelligence Community Whistleblowers Protection Act that Schiff is talking about. So it's a narrow legal argument. I'm not sure how the courts are gonna come down on that, because it is a member of the intelligence community who's filed the complaint, we know, but we don't know whether it's about specifically about classified intelligence matters. And we know that the person that involves Donald Trump is not in the intelligence community. So that's what this is hinging on. But the independent inspector general of the intelligence community, who's a career DOJ official, as Schiff said, a nonpartisan neutral observer, he is saying that this should be turned over to Congress. And look, whether it fits under this narrow whistleblower law or not, the point is there's been an allegation of misconduct made involving the president. There's got to be a way that Congress gets to know the details of that. I mean, it's classified. If it involves a phone call with a foreign leader, it's classified because foreign relations of the United States that the president conducts generally are classified. But that doesn't betray a source or a method or a specific intelligence secret that's going to cost people's lives. And the American public should have a right to know if there is an allegation of misconduct, of a smarmy deal, of some kind of inappropriate offer by the president of the United States to a foreign leader.
Except, of course, Ken, we're not talking about costing people their lives. We're talking about information that could potentially cost a very important person their job. Josh, I can't think of a better day to talk about your book, Crossfire Hurricane, because in the book, you specifically talk about the need for independent oversight of federal agencies like the FBI. That sounds great, except look at the situation we're in today, where an independent watchdog agency gets overruled and we don't even know why.
Right. This is a stress test on this institution and the processes in a way that we haven't seen. Now, we know that the president comes in as a disruptor, or someone who was unconventional. But what I argue in the book, I write about this clash between the White House and the intelligence community and the institutional norms. As I mentioned, you go back and look in our history, there were real abuses of power inside the intelligence committee. So in the 1970s, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover and others engaged in gross violations of human rights, or not human rights, civil liberties in the name of national security. And J. Edgar Hoover had some 500,000 intelligence files on U.S. citizens. Since that time, the Congress came in and said, no more. We're going to institute these oversight committees like Chairman Schiff that we just saw. His committee is a direct result of these reforms.
But right now, doesn't it seem like these committees, while they shouldn't be, appear feckless? They're just, time and again, they come out and they're outraged and norms have been violated. But there's nothing that can be done about it.
Not yet.
Kellyanne Conway laughs when people raise violating the Hatch Act.
Right, and I think that we haven't seen a result yet or a remedy. That's where the third branch of government comes in, the courts. And as Chairmanship mentioned, they're likely to litigate this. We'll have to wait and see whether that third branch comes in and says, look, this isn't just an incident. These aren't just norms or guardrails. These are laws. The Whistleblower Protection Act that's law. And so if it appears as though the White House is stonewalling and violating these processes as they relate to the Inspector General and getting information about abuses to the elected representatives, I suspect that we'll see the court step in and try to get that information dislodged and again to the representatives that need to have it.
Josh, we'll soon find out. What a perfect day to talk about this book. Josh Campbell, Abby Livingston, and my dear friend Ken Galanian. Josh's book, Crossfire Hurricane, Inside Donald Trump's War on the FBI. I recommend it. Check it out. And right now, let's take you to Texas because rescues are underway in East Texas as the storm wreaks havoc on the area. We're going to go live from the historic floods. And all day, today and tomorrow, we are watching MSNBC's 2020 Climate Forum down in Washington, D.C., hosted by my colleague and partner, Ali Velshi and Chris Hayes. We're going to check in with Ali in just a few. There he is with Democratic candidate Marianne Williamson. You're watching Velshi and Rule on MSNBC.
To my viewers, I hope that you understand how that they have ripped, torn, violated my rights. And it wasn't just my rights, it was a ministry's rights, of what the ministry had the right of standing up to and being a part of. It wasn't just one particular individual that they was attacking or that they was violating. I hope to my sincere viewers that they truly understand what has occurred and what has went on here, not just pertaining to the bigger matters pertaining to the White House, but also to the matters that happened and the founder of the Windmill Ministries' lives. Thanks again. Shalom. See ya. Bye.